I came home one night to find the locks changed. My own house. My own key useless in my own door. First I thought maybe I was losing it. That I'd grabbed the wrong key from my ring. That maybe the door was jammed. But when I leaned down, hands trembling, I saw it. A shiny new lock. Cold. Perfect. And on the door frame, a small note written in my mother's handwriting. We need space. Don't come inside. No explanation. No warning. Just that. I stood there in the dark, clutching grocery bags that suddenly felt like dead weights. I could hear voices inside, muffled laughing. My sister's laugh, high-pitched and cutting. My mother's low hum like approval wrapped in poison. And then a sound that made my stomach drop, my daughter's voice. Elena. Grandma, can I sleep in your bed tonight? She asked. I froze. My throat tightened. My daughter was in there. With them. While I was locked out. I don't even remember how long I stood there, hand pressed against the wood as if I could will the door to open. Minutes. Hours. Maybe days. At some point the groceries slipped from my arms, oranges rolling across the porch like tiny suns mocking me. Finally I knocked. Soft at first, then harder. No one answered. Just silence. Silence so loud it burned. And that was the moment, standing outside my own house locked away from my own child, that I knew this wasn't just about a lock. This was war. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car across the street, engine off, lights out, watching the faint glow coming from the windows. My house. My daughter. My family, and yet I felt like an intruder. I called my mother's phone. Straight to voicemail. I called my sister's. She hung up after one ring. By 3 a.m. I finally drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town. I laid on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, my chest heavy with something I didn't have a name for yet. Anger. Panic. Shame. All of it tangled into a knot that made it hard to breathe. By morning I came back. The lock was still there. But this time there was another note taped to the door. Bigger. Bolder. Elena is safe with us. You need help. Until you get it, stay away. I tore the paper to shreds with shaking hands. I need help? Me, the one who raised Elena alone for 6 years. Me, the one who worked double shifts to keep a roof over our heads. Me, the one who begged them for nothing ever. I couldn't understand it. I kept replaying the last few weeks in my head, trying to find the moment everything started to slip. And then I remembered. 2 weeks ago, I caught my sister, Nadia, whispering to my mother in the kitchen. I walked in and they went silent, staring at me like I'd interrupted something forbidden. I laughed it off back then, thinking it was just gossip, just them being them. But now, standing there with the pieces of their note crumpled in my fist, I realized it wasn't gossip. This was planned. They had been plotting. I called the police. I told them my daughter had been taken without my consent. They came, they listened, they knocked. My mother opened the door, calm as ice, and said, Elena wants to stay here. And my daughter, my little girl, peeked from behind her, eyes wide, confused. The officer looked at me, then at her, then back at me. There's no sign of danger, he said softly. This is a family matter. Settle it privately. Then they left. I stood there on the porch trembling, realizing just how far my family was willing to go. This wasn't just betrayal. This was an ambush. The third day I stopped knocking. I just stood across the street, staring, while neighbors peeked from behind curtains like it was some soap opera. That's when my sister came out. Nadia. My shadow since childhood. 2 years younger, forever spoiled, forever excused. She stepped onto my porch with a coffee mug in her hand like she owned the place. She saw me and smiled. Not warm. Not kind. Triumphant. You look tired, she called across the street. Maybe you should rest. Rest. The word dripped with mockery. I wanted to scream, to run across the road and shake her until the truth spilled out, but something stopped me. That smirk. That calmness. She wasn't afraid. She wanted me to lose it. So instead I said nothing. I just stared until her smile faltered. And that's when she slipped, her voice lower, meant only for me. You should have listened. Mom was right. You were never meant to keep her. Her. Elena. My daughter. The word sliced through me like glass. Never meant to keep her? What the hell did that mean? That night I went back to the motel and tore through old boxes I'd kept locked away. birth certificates, hospital records, anything that could tell me what they were planning. And then I found it. A will. My father's will. He died when I was 19. We never talked about it much. Mom always brushed it off, said there wasn't much to inherit. But here it was, folded and yellowed with age. I skimmed through it, hands shaking. And then I froze. There was a clause. A trust fund. For Elena. My daughter. Money I had never known existed. Money my mother had kept quiet about for years. It was supposed to be released when Elena turned 7, which was next month. I sat there on the bed, staring at the paper as the puzzle pieces locked together in my mind. This wasn't about me being unfit. This wasn't about them protecting Elena. This was about money. About control. And my family had just declared war to steal it. I couldn't unsee it. That clause in the will. That trust fund. That money waiting in Elena's name like a ticking clock. Suddenly every smile, every "we just want what's best." Every cold silence from my mother replayed in my head with a different filter. This wasn't care. It was greed dressed as concern. The next morning, I didn't just stand across the street. I marched straight up to the door and banged until the wood rattled. "Open it," I shouted. "Now." It took a full minute before the door cracked open. My mother stood there, expression carved from stone. Behind her, I could see Elena at the kitchen table, a bowl of cereal in front of her, my sister hovering like a guard. "You're scaring her," my mother said coolly. "No," I snapped, pointing past her. "You are." I shoved the will into her chest. "I know. I know about the trust. About the money. That's why you're doing this." Her face flickered. Not guilt, not shame, just irritation at being exposed. She glanced over her shoulder at Nadia, then back at me. "You've always been paranoid," she murmured. I almost laughed. "Paranoid? You locked me out of my own house." At that, Elena slid off her chair and padded over, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She pressed her face to the gap in the door, eyes huge. "Mommy," she whispered. God, it broke me. My knees nearly buckled. "I'm right here, baby," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. But then Nadia swooped in, yanking her back. "She's confused," she snapped. "You're making her anxious." That was it. Something inside me snapped so cleanly it almost felt like relief. I shoved the door wide open and stepped inside. The smell hit me first, my house but wrong. Too much perfume. My sister's jacket on the chair. My mother's purse on the counter. Like parasites nesting in a body that wasn't theirs. "Get out," I said, my voice low, shaking with rage. Neither of them moved. Nadia laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "You think you can just walk back in here after everything? Elena belongs with us now. And when the time comes, the court will agree." "The court?" I repeated. My blood turned to ice. She smirked. "You'll see." I didn't leave. Not right away. I stood there in my own kitchen, feeling like an intruder while my mother and sister looked at me like I was the criminal. "The court," I repeated, still stunned. My mother finally spoke, her tone flat, rehearsed. "We've already spoken to a lawyer. We're filing for emergency custody." The words didn't land at first. My ears rang, my pulse hammered so loud it drowned out her voice. I stared at her, lips moving, but all I could hear was that one phrase looping. "Emergency custody. You can't be serious," I whispered. But Nadia was grinning like she'd already won. "You're unstable. Everyone knows it. You work too much, you leave Elena alone with sitters, you break down. We've kept track." She pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Photos. Screenshots. I caught a glimpse of one, me crying in the car after work, taken from across the street. Another of Elena eating takeout on the couch. Another of me coming home past midnight, exhausted, with dark circles under my eyes. They'd been collecting evidence. Building a case. Stalking me in my own life. My mother's voice cut through, low and sharp. "We can provide her stability. Proper family. Money for her future. Not whatever this is." I wanted to scream, to tear the phone out of Nadia's hand and smash it. But then Elena stepped forward again, her little voice breaking. "I don't want to stay here. I want Mommy." Silence. Heavy. Cracking. Nadia grabbed her arm too tightly. She doesn't know what she wants. That's when I saw it. The faint bruise on Elena's wrist where my sister's fingers dug in. and something inside me went very, very still. I didn't shout. I didn't fight. I just bent down to Elena's level, looked her in the eyes and said, "Go pack a bag, baby. We're leaving." Nadia's face twisted. She's not going anywhere. But Elena didn't hesitate. She bolted down the hallway. My mother moved to block me, but I stepped forward, close enough that she could see the fury in my eyes. "You think you've trapped me?" I whispered. "No. You've just handed me proof." And for the first time I saw fear flicker in hers. Elena came back dragging her tiny backpack, the stuffed rabbit peeking out of the zipper. She clung to me like I was the last solid thing in a collapsing world. Nadia lunged, but I was faster. I scooped Elena into my arms and stepped back. My heart beat a drum in my ears. "You're kidnapping her," Nadia hissed. I laughed. A cold, ugly sound that didn't sound like me at all. Kidnapping? In my own house? But I knew how this game worked. Words twisted, stories rewritten. I couldn't let them own the narrative this time. So I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Say that again," I told her. She froze. "Go ahead. Tell the camera how I'm kidnapping my own daughter in my own home, after you changed the locks and filed false reports." For once, Nadia didn't have a comeback. She just glared jaw tight like a cornered animal. My mother's voice wavered. "Turn that off." "No," I said. My hand was steady now. "Not this time." Then I dialed 911. I gave them the address, my voice flat, clinical. I told them my mother and sister had illegally changed the locks, were holding my daughter against my consent, and were attempting to build a false custody case. And I said the words I knew would make them come fast. "They've been emotionally abusive, and I believe my child is in danger." The silence that followed was delicious. My mother's lips thinned to a sharp white line. Nadia looked like she wanted to claw the phone from my hand but knew she couldn't. Not with that red recording dot still blinking. When the police arrived, it wasn't like last time. I met them at the door, calm, Elena clutching my shirt, phone still recording. I showed them the will, the trust clause, the notes taped to my door, and the bruise on my daughter's wrist. And for the first time I watched authority land on my side. The officer turned to my mother. "Ma'am, you'll need to leave the premises. Now." Her face went slack, disbelief spreading like cracks in porcelain. "But this is my family." The officer cut her off. "And this is not your home. Pack your things. You're trespassing." Nadia sputtered, voice high, desperate. "You don't understand, she's unstable, she's..." The officer looked at me. "Do you want a restraining order filed?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yes." And for the first time in my life, I watched them escorted out of my house while I stood in the doorway, holding my daughter. But as my mother turned at the threshold, she gave me one last look. Not anger. Not shame. Something colder. "Promise. This isn't over," she whispered. And I believed her. For 3 days the house was quiet. Too quiet. Elena slept curled against me every night, waking up whimpering, asking if Grandma was coming back. I told her no. I lied. On the 4th morning my phone started buzzing. Aunt Lisa. Then Cousin Mark. Then a number I didn't recognize. The first voicemail was syrupy sweet. "Honey, I heard what happened. Everyone's worried. Your mother said you're not well. That Elena's better off with them until you get treatment." Treatment. The word made my blood run cold. The next message was sharper. "How could you? Locking your own mother out? After everything she's done for you? Elena deserves stability." By noon I knew exactly what they were doing. My mother and sister hadn't just licked their wounds. They'd gone nuclear. They were rewriting history in real time, painting me as unstable, dangerous, unfit. And people who hadn't spoken to me in years were eating it up like gospel. The family group chat blew up. Screenshots poured in. Accusations. Whispered half-truths turned into bold lies. They said I screamed at Elena. That I left her alone for days. That I had breakdowns, violent ones. The words blurred together on the screen, but one line burned into me. She doesn't deserve to be a mother. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall. Instead, I opened my porch camera app. I still had the footage from that night. Nadia yanking Elena's wrist, the bruise blooming on her skin, my mother blocking the door. I uploaded it straight to the family chat. No caption. Just truth, raw and undeniable. And for a moment silence. Then chaos. Some relatives gasped. Others doubled down. Out of context. Manipulated. She's making this up. I stared at the screen, hands shaking, realizing something bone deep. It didn't matter how much proof I had. People didn't want truth. They wanted a story that fit the roles they'd already chosen for us. And in their script, I was the villain. That night, as I tucked Elena into bed, my phone buzzed again. A text. From a blocked number. Court date. Sooner than you think. And I knew then. They weren't just trying to shame me. They were trying to erase me. I thought I knew how bad it would be. I didn't. The first custody hearing was a month later. In a small beige courtroom that smelled like old paper and sweat. I walked in clutching Elena's hand, my lawyer at my side, my stomach churning like it was full of glass. On the other side, my mother and sister sat like royalty. Matching blouses. Perfect hair. Faces arranged into masks of quiet concern. As if they were the martyrs here. When the judge asked why they were seeking custody, Nadia launched into a performance worthy of an Oscar. She's unstable, she said softly, eyes downcast. She leaves Elena alone for hours, she screams, she breaks things. We've seen it. We've documented it. She pulled out a stack of photos. Me crying in the car. Me slumped on the couch after a 14-hour shift. Takeout containers scattered on the table. To them, evidence. To me, survival. My lawyer objected, demanded context, but the poison was already in the air. I could see the judge's lips tighten, the pen scratching notes. Then they paraded out witnesses. 2 cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years but swore they'd seen the instability. An old neighbor who said she once heard yelling through the walls. And finally, my mother. She stood, voice trembling just enough to look sincere. We only want what's best for Elena. She deserves a safe, stable home. My daughter, she's sick. And she won't admit it. I wanted to leap across the table, to scream until the walls shook. But then Elena. The judge asked if she wanted to speak. She was only 6, so it wasn't required, but she nodded bravely. She climbed onto the witness chair. Legs dangling, clutching her rabbit. Who do you want to live with, sweetheart? The judge asked gently. And in the smallest but clearest voice, she said, My mom. Always my mom. The courtroom fell silent. My mother's face cracked. Nadia looked like she'd swallowed glass. The judge scribbled something, then looked up. We'll reconvene. But for now, Elena stays with her mother. Relief washed over me, sharp and sweet, but it didn't last. Because as we left the courtroom, my mother leaned close enough that only I could hear her. This isn't over, she whispered again. Her voice was steady. Too steady. And I knew they had more left to play. After court, things got quieter on the surface. But silence from my family never meant peace. It meant planning. The calls stopped. The group chat went dead. Even Nadia's social media went dark. And that scared me more than the smear campaign. Then one evening a letter arrived. Not from them, from my father's old lawyer. It was a thin envelope, cream-colored, the kind that looks too polite to contain ruin. Inside was a single sheet. A copy of the original will. The one I'd seen before wasn't the whole story. There was another clause. Buried deep. If, for any reason, I was declared unfit as a parent, guardianship of the trust would pass not to a neutral third party, but to my mother. My stomach turned. It wasn't paranoia. It was design. My father had given her the lever decades ago, and she'd been biding her time. I dug deeper. I went back through old records, hospital files, even dusty photo albums. And what I found made my skin crawl. When I gave birth to Elena, I was barely 21. Exhausted, broke, desperate. I remembered my mother insisting she'd handle the paperwork, that I should just focus on resting. I hadn't thought twice. But there it was, her signature everywhere. Applications. Insurance. Even the trust documents. My name always second, like I was an afterthought. It hit me then. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't even about Elena, not really. This had been brewing since the day she was born. And maybe even before that. Because buried in the lawyer's note was something else. A file number. A hint that this wasn't the first time my mother had tried to declare me unfit. I spent the whole night combing through public records, my hands shaking. and at 3 a.m., I found it. A sealed petition from years ago, filed when I was 19, right after my father died. She had tried to have me declared incompetent to control my inheritance. She'd failed. The court had dismissed it. But she hadn't stopped. She just waited for me to have something she could steal. And now she thought she'd found it. I sat there in the blue glow of the laptop screen, my daughter asleep beside me, and I made a decision. This wasn't defense anymore. This was war. I didn't tell them what I knew. I let them think I was still scrambling, still on the back foot. Because that's how they liked me, panicked, defensive, small. But inside I was steel. The next custody hearing came faster than I expected. I walked into that courtroom with Elena's hand in mine, her rabbit tucked under her arm, and a folder clutched to my chest like a weapon. They were there, of course. My mother in pearls, Nadia in black like she was attending my funeral. They looked smug, confident. I almost pitied them. Almost. The judge asked if there was new evidence. My lawyer nodded and handed over the folder. Inside were the documents I'd dug up. The sealed petition from when I was 19, my mother's old attempt to declare me incompetent, the trust fund clause, the hidden signatures she'd buried, and the kicker, the porch camera footage of Nadia gripping Elena hard enough to leave bruises. The room went still. My mother's face drained of color. Nadia's lips parted but no words came. The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Mrs. Carter," he said slowly to my mother, "this is a troubling pattern." Troubling. Such a small word for decades of sabotage. But it was enough. By the end of the day, their petition was denied. My custody reaffirmed. And at my lawyer's urging, the judge issued something more. A restraining order. For the first time in my life, the law was a wall between us. When we left the courthouse, Nadia hissed as we passed. "You think you've won? We're still family." I stopped, turned, and looked her dead in the eyes. "No. Your blood. That's not the same thing." She flinched just slightly. And then my mother grabbed her arm, pulling her away like a general retreating from a lost battle. That night, I tucked Elena into bed and sat in the silence of my house, listening to her soft breathing. For the first time in years, the air wasn't heavy. It wasn't poisoned. It was clean. I opened my phone, scrolled through the dozens of missed calls, unread messages, desperate voicemails. I deleted them all. Not out of spite. Out of survival. Because here's the truth I had to carve out in blood and paper and silence. Family isn't who shares your DNA. Family is who keeps you safe. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is lock the door and throw away the key.